Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Maggie, and here's her story. Ollie, I've been no contact with my mother for over 4 years now because of her classic narcissistic behaviors. My parents are married, but I was under the delusion that my mother was the main problem, while my father was just an enabler. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I realized how I had been fooled by him. In one dramatic incident, I discovered just how far my father would go in order to safeguard his reputation, his most prized possession. One day in a public setting, he lied about me and my character to a group of his peers for sympathy and to protect his reputation. Unknown to him, one of these peers happened to be a dear friend of mine. When I confronted my father, he lied again, blamed me for all sorts of offenses, then viciously attacked the character and honesty of my friend. At that moment, I realized the depths of narcissism in him as well. It devastated me, but has finally opened my eyes. Growing up, my mother always the perpetual damsel in distress, and my father was her knight in shining armor. My mother played sick most of my childhood and youth. She spent most of her time in bed, feigning one illness or another. No one could ever be sicker or have it worse than her, and my father made sure we all knew that. At the age of 4, my mother taught me to clean toilets and eventually relied on me to clean bathrooms, as well as nearly everything else in the house. I distinctly remember being small enough to climb on top of the sink vanities to clean the mirrors. I vacuumed and mopped the floors too. I was fourth I was fourth of 5 kids, and frankly, I served as the family maid. I was a good kid. I tried never to misbehave because punishments were swift and often severe. My father enforced cleanliness to the point of violence. There's got to be religion and there's got to be religion in this story. It always is with like this. My earliest memory of my father was him ripping me out of bed in the middle of the night and dragging me down to the small basement playroom. He pointed at a little pile of pencil shavings I had left on the floor, grabbed me, and proceeded to beat me repeatedly as hard as he could on my backside. He screamed at me to clean up my mess and stormed off. I was 4 years old and terrified of him. My parents' ultimate goal was to make sure everyone knew they had the perfect family. We needed to obey them and behave perfectly in public, especially at church. There you go. If we wiggled too much during church services or dared to whisper or do anything that might reflect poorly on my parents, we were punished severely. My dad lined us up in the kitchen, chastised us, and beat us on our bare behinds with a wooden spoon. We learned early on to obey him. Neither my mother nor father would console us after any punishment. They thought it would reward bad behavior. My mother knew My mother never, ever kissed us and rarely touched us at all. She was constantly critical, most every adult we knew from church or the neighborhood. She would criticize everyone's weight and kept a close eye on her daughter's weights as well. Shortly before entering college, I remember her telling me that I had put on a lot of weight recently and I wasn't even 120 pounds. My sisters and I were never pretty enough for her, and we were never thin enough for her. She would brag to us that she only weighed 103 pounds when she got married. My father would reinforce these ideas by telling his thin daughters that their likelihood of getting married would diminish with each pound they put on. My sisters and I are still dealing with emotional issues related to our weights. It's taken me years and years of being married to a wonderful, kind man to get over a lot of those issues. I've attached a photo of my husband and kids because they're the next part of my story pertains to them, and I don't really want to give out personal details of my children's ages, genders, but you can see how many children I have and roughly what I'm talking about. Wow. I still attend the religion of my birth every week. I have no issues with it or any other religions in general. Having been raised in a very religious household, however, I have seen how narcissistic parents use that religion to control and manipulate kids into doing whatever the parent wants them to do. My parents did this to me. They're still trying to do this to me. None of my siblings will speak up for me, although I've confronted my parents on multiple occasions when they've mistreated several family members. Well, I learned the hard way, as many of us do. Just because we stick up for the golden child and other family members, don't expect it to be in return. This isn't a NATO alliance that you have with your family members in narcissism. It never is. Where one gets attacked, we all get attacked. That's where I made my mistake with my brother, thinking if one of us got attacked, we're both attacked. But no, that's what you find out. You're in it by yourself. I've often been told, if you don't forgive others, then God won't forgive you. I hate that line so much. It's like a perpetual get out of jail free card that the narc uses time and time again. Right, and you have to understand where I'm coming from when I say this. Okay? When they're talking about God, they're not talking about a deity. They're talking about themselves. And like I made the point to Denise, I'm going to make the same point to you. Okay? Your parents aren't God-fearing. They're atheists, using religion as a means of control. When they say God, they're talking about themselves. My mother has choked out the words, "I'm sorry," only twice to me in her entire life. The words rang hollow, however, as nothing changed, and she went right back to her narcissistic ways. I believe now that she said it only to reel me back in. I don't think I could ever trust another apology from her again. Exactly, another hoovering technique. But I'm going to make the same point again. Okay? If these religious narcissists believe in this afterlife and they're going to have an accounting to God for their life, how could they be religious and explain this? How do they explain this to God? They can't. They can't. It only makes sense if you go by the premise that your parents are really atheists using religion for their own needs. It's the only way it makes any sense. How do you account for your life to God when you die? If you're this giant religious person and it's all to serve God and then make it to the promised land, how you explain any of it? Like, how does it make it? It only makes sense if you accept that your parents are atheists faking religion. It's what's going on. I have endured smear campaigns. My parents have tried to ruin my reputation among all my family by telling people what a cruel daughter I am. We live as far away from them as we can. But after that incident 2 years ago, my father sought out my church leader, sending him text and email messages, demanding we all meet together so he could get me in line. I explained what had happened to my church leader, who has since become a father figure to me. For the first time in my life, someone in authority whom I trusted helped me realize how I had been verbally and emotionally abused by my parents. Thankfully, I was protected from my father. By both him and my husband. My father continued to text and email my church leader for almost an entire year. My dad was set on discrediting anything I had divulged to him in case this incident got out to anyone in his social circle. Frustrated by not getting anywhere, my father went on to email my husband repeatedly. he said these things to him. We are going to stand before the judgment bar of Christ and account for our lives. We must forgive others if we expect to receive forgiveness from God. It grieves me that your wife apparently cannot forgive her parents enough to even communicate with us. That is such a projection. And it goes to what I'm talking about, that judgment bar of Christ. He's worried about his judgment bar. We must forgive others. Is that what he said? That's bullshit. Is that really what God's big question is on Judgment Day? Whether or not you forgive others' misgivings? No, 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 no. That's the ramblings of somebody who sees themselves as a false deity. He's talking about himself. This only makes sense if you accept the premise that your father is really an atheist. Sees him using religion to make himself God. Then he wrote this. She is so full of anger that I am afraid for her physical health and spiritual well-being. I don't know the source of this anger. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Him. Because all he's worried about, like you said, is his reputation. If he's so religious, you can't soil his reputation with God, can you? No, because God's omniscient. He knows all and sees all. So what is he talking about? His reputation in the mortal world, in this world, with people, what he really cares about. The people he puts himself as God over, whose reputation he's talking about. But he uses religion to make it seem like it's the deity. It's not. He doesn't believe in a deity. He can't, because he's never going to be able to account for any of this to an actual deity. Is he? No. The reputation he's worried about is the reputation in the mortal world. Nothing godlike about it. I don't know the source of this anger, but nothing we have ever done to her remotely justifies this kind of rage or deliberately cruel response to us, cutting us out of her life and out of the lives of the grandchildren we love. I think you know that her behavior is wrong, whatever her disagreements with us. Excuse me. I hope you would never treat your parents this way. Your wife needs therapy to understand why she is so angry and to deal with it. And he wrote this because I talked to close friends about what was going on. Her father again. There is no justification for anyone to know about any of this mess between us. There is certainly no excuse for gossip to spread our family problem around. No member of the church should know about this family problem. No one. I guess he was upset that he could no longer control the narrative. Most people who know him on a casual basis think he's wonderful and kind. Right. The people he sees as his sheep, his followers. He sees himself as God. He's only worried about his reputation on earth. And then he's going to hide behind religion to make it seem like there's this soul-saving reason. No. It's nothing more than the narcissist ego. The narcissist atheist hiding behind religion and their ego. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. This is who he is. He don't believe a word of this religious shit. He just uses it for his own means. My mother wrote this excerpt 4 years ago after I confronted her on several issues. We never kept a list of bad things you did to us and to other people so we can itemize them to you in anger and retaliation. You are not a perfect daughter either. We forgave and forgot anything disappointing, irritating, or wrong you ever did. Thanks, Mom. Gee, thanks for not keeping lists on your own kid. And it's not like we keep lists, asshole. This is the shit that haunts us. Like, and that's what they think. Like, we're sitting around keeping lists. No, this is the shit that has been on our backs our whole life. If we could shake it, we would. Not carry around this basket of fuckery. We forgive your cruelty to us now. There you go, making yourself the deity again, making yourself God again, but we forgive. Even without you asking it, rather than rail against us and assign us black motives, please say, I know you love me dearly and always have. This experience hurt me a lot and made me feel this way. What is going on in your minds as my parents at that time? What were you thinking that I may see and understand with eyes other than the eyes of a child? You have made me into a boogeyman and have attributed to me all kinds of incorrect, false motives. That is not fair or right way to treat anyone, let alone your mother. You remember the experiences from the point of view of the child involved with them. But children, even adult children, cannot discern and analyze the intents and desires of their parents' hearts. Right. You're just too young to know what was in my heart as I was beating the shit, letting your father beat the shit out of you and doing whatever manipulative shit. Because somewhere in my heart I loved you, right? Thanks, Mom. I remember the experiences you recount from the point of view of being the loving mother who was responsible for training her child, like a pet. You don't train children, you raise children. Training, that's the problem. You train a dog, not a child. One thing that really stood out to me was her telling me exactly how she wants me to phrase any questions in the future. I know you love me dearly. What were you thinking that I may see and understand with eyes other than the eyes of a child? I was 34 years old when she wrote this to me. What on earth was wrong with this woman? She sees herself as a god and sees you as nothing more than something she can train, like a pet, like a dog, like a trick horse. That's it. You're a pet. At least, oh, wait a minute. At the end of the last real letter I got from her almost 4 years ago, she said this: you are among the most privileged and cared for children on earth, and now it appears that you have cast off the two people who gave you life, who loved you and served you. The commandment to honor your parents, that your days may be long upon the face of the earth, has not been revoked. We do not demand honor of you, but we do ask you that you be more temperate in your communications and more aware that our motives have always been rooted in love, not in the black things you have imagined. It's like if Jesus had an attorney, like he would have wrote that. Like, what is that? It's like almost religious legal speak. And it's nothing more than trying to saying how you're basically a spoiled brat, and again telling you how to communicate with them. When I think obviously at this point you're not communicating with them at all. but they're looking to spark that reaction from you. Her saying the black things you have imagined is complete gaslighting, right? Of course it is. It's all in your imagination because they're setting themselves up as God, as a deity anyway. So it's all in your head. This was the end of a very lengthy letter she wrote to me, contradicting and or denying absolutely everything I confronted her with. 3 years after she sent that letter, she wrote me a poem for my birthday. Mind you, my mother never celebrated one of my birthdays growing up. No presents ever. There was no religious angle here. She just always thought that birthdays were too much work, and so she never cared to mention them. She claimed she simply felt too stressed out to make us even so much as a cake for our birthday. My dad would just cut us a small check. Like an employee. Wow. A check from your dad? Whew. Nothing says family like that as a kid. A check from your dad on your birthday. There's quite a bit more that goes into that area of my life, but I'm not going to go into it. So last year, my mother decided to write a poem. My mother decided to write me a poem for my birthday. I just appreciate hearing what you think of it. I don't think it's going to win a Pulitzer Prize anytime soon. It's awful. This is exactly how it was written. Heart half empty. To Maggie. I'm so sorry for words, deeds, and every hurt, both great and tiny. Though I meant no injury and tried to act wisely, I failed so miserably. Please will you forgive me? I'm so sorry. That I caused your many hurts, loss, pain, grief, wounds, sads. It actually sads. All my bads so badly, hurt you so profoundly. Please will you forgive me? Sorry. You are lovely, filled with grief so deeply. Seek our Savior truly. Oh no. Seek our Savior truly. Remember, they see themselves as God. He will heal you freely. She's talking about your dad here. She's talking about her and your dad here. I plead with God daily for his tender mercy to heal your every hurts, loss, pain, grief, wounds, sads. Please will you forgive me? I am sorry. Heart yearns remorsefully. Eyes do weep profusely. Thoughts churn incessantly. With love from your mommy, whose heart is half empty. Is bullshit. It's bullshit. Okay, that's the poetry she wrote for me. I love your thoughts because for me personally, it gave me the heebie-jeebies. It gave me the, seeing me read it is like, ugh. I don't even know how to process it. She only ever apologized twice in her life, and now she's writing poetry to me. What do you think this was all about? And for the record, I never, ever called her mommy. It's a hoovering attempt. That's all it is a hoovering. What is she sorry for? It was just awful. It was creepy as hell. She went right back to the religion, the savior thing. They see themselves as God. Talking about themselves. My mother thinks she's a great writer. Years ago, she started writing what she called lessons from life. It was truly the tipping point in my relationship with her. She started writing down personal religious stories for the grandchildren. They were to be keepsake memories of grandma and grandpa for times when the kids would have to lean on the faith of their grandparents to make it through life. Kind of like your mother's writing her own Bible here. See themselves as God. Your mother's writing her own Bible for the family. Is it making sense? It all only makes sense if you believe the premise that your parents are actually atheists faking it. The children were each given their own binder marked Volume 1 on the side. Are you kidding me? Every story was inserted into plastic sheet protectors. The audacity of it all made me physically sick. She is obsessed with leaving some sort of legacy, like Moses. She's like she's God. And the children are Moses, each getting their tablet to walk down for their legacy. She is obsessed with leaving some sort of legacy. She wants the grandkids to revere her and my father as the spiritual pillars of our family. I told her to stop sending these stories to my kids. She didn't respect that. She wrote and said, kids like stories about their ancestors. We have been commanded by God to write and share our personal histories. I write to testify and teach. This woman of God used to call us children little shits growing up. I'd love to see how she could weave that tidbit into a keepsake memory for her grandkids. Shit, sounds like Old Testament. That sounds like some Old Testament type shit in your mother's religion. She's already up to New Testament. I started sending all of her stories back. I wrote her a letter and said that she wasn't going to use my religion against me to control and manipulate me anymore. And she certainly wasn't going to do it to my kids. Now, even though I'm no contact, she is still trying to send her stories to my children on their birthdays and such. She never asks the children what they're interested in. All she ever wants to write about is herself. I haven't passed on one word of it to my kids. Sometimes I throw things directly into the trash without opening them. I think my parents just caught on to the fact that I don't cash any checks they send from my kids. Though we could certainly use the money, I'm not accepting it. I think they finally started to come unhinged. My father, who had left my husband alone for a long time, has begged my husband to pass on letters from them to their grandchildren, to pass on money and so forth. My husband's ignoring him. My mother sent an unexpected letter to my oldest child a couple weeks ago, which I didn't pass on, of course, but my curiosity got the better of me. In it, my mother talked about all the many things they're doing at church, of course. Then she says, Grandpa and I think of you, your mom, dad, and siblings every day. We pray for all of you and ask others to pray for you many, many times throughout each year. We hope our prayers will somehow help you feel our love. This praying for me is so irritating. Please tell me why this gets under my skin so much. Because it puts them in the position of looking down there. It gets on your skin. How dare you even say, I need to be prayed for? And by all people, you. Because we know you don't believe in this shit. You're just using it to control your other people so you can set yourself up as God. Who are you praying to? You don't believe in God. That's first. We know they're atheists. Secondly, it's the assumption that I would even need to be prayed for. And third, that if I did, I would even want some of the likes of you doing it. Please, please. That's why it gets under your skin so much. What on earth does it mean when your abuser tells you that they're praying for you? That's what it means. It means I'm looking down my nose at you. When the narc tells you they're praying for you, it's a way of them telling you, I'm better than you. You need to be prayed for because you're so bad, a deity needs to come in and save you. Suck my dick in the most religious way possible. I was content to continue to ignore my parents, but they're getting more aggressive. They don't always send things from their home address, so I can't unilaterally put return to sender on letters or packages. Is putting a return to sender on packages and letters breaking no contact with them? I don't think so. No, it's not. Should I just keep throwing stuff away and letting them stew about it? That's a personal choice because they're going to continue to stew on it no matter what you do. No matter what you do, until they eventually show up, which they will eventually do. I don't know exactly how to best proceed. I don't feel like they'll ever let me have any peace or respect my wishes to be left alone. They won't. I don't want anything to do with them, and it's really frustrating. Sometimes I go into panic attacks, imagining they'll fly across the country just to show up at our house and confront us at church or in some other social setting. How can I finally feel free? Well, I just told you, that is something that is definitely will happen eventually. If they're able to do it, it'll happen. You have to be prepared, and you have to make sure your social circle is prepared to deal with it. Seems like the church is already. You have really good support from whoever the head of that father figure person in your church is. So you just got to make sure he understands and people in your social circle understand. One day it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to show up, and I'm going to need everybody's support. Okay, and they're going to show up with stories of why I'm bad, why I'm this, why I'm that, and I just don't want it. That's what needs to happen. You need to prepare. You need to prepare for the impending landing of the narcissists because they will eventually invade. They can't help it. They're like North Korea. They can't stop. They're nuts. They're legitimately... That's the narcissist. That's the Terminator. That's what they're programmed to do. So eventually, it can come to that. The people in your circle have to be prepared for it. I can't thank you fully for all the help you have been to me personally. I discovered you last October. You put into context so many things that had happened to me. The flying monkeys, for example, were just a spot-on description of most of my family members. I sat my husband down to listen to The Narcissist Put You on Trial for Life so he can understand why simple questions he asked me put me on edge and why I read into so much of what people have to say. The idea that no contact is like chemotherapy and it gets worse before it gets better was very helpful. Also, everything you have to say about the religious narcissist has been spot on. I never realized that when they talk about God, they're really referring to themselves. I don't want to screw my kids up. It's my biggest concern. I don't want to control them through religion, though we attend church. I want them to choose for themselves, and I'm not trying to control them. Though my kids look really well behaved in that picture, my home is loud and crazy most of the time. My kids literally climb the walls from time to time. My life is chaotic but good. It certainly doesn't resemble the way I grew up, which I take comfort in. I will say this, Maggie. The two people I feel for are your husband and your youngest. That's all I'm going to say about that. Wow. But you have a lovely family. They are. They're lovely. A small part of me worries that maybe I am the cruel daughter that my parents have portrayed and that I have no justification for cutting ties with them. I could really use your insight and advice on how to handle this. Thank you so much, Ollie. Maggie. Well, Maggie, I think you're handling it perfectly. You know, for the amount of bullshit you've gone through and what you've dealt with and what you continue to do, you're handling it fine. And you got your husband's support and you got the support of your social circle. They just need to be prepared for when this eventually happens. Now, whether you just keep throwing stuff out or returning it to sender, doing a return to sender is going to put it right in their face that you're rejecting them. Which could either tell them she's rejecting me, just back off, which they never do. They might back off for a little while, but they're going to get a wild hair up their ass one day and eventually hop that plane. Now, with the other one, which is throwing things away, but they're sending checks and they're just never getting cashed, that almost gives them an excuse to come looking for you. Well, I just want to make sure everything's all right, and this money and this and that. And you understand, it's like you can't win for losing. And that's why these types of decisions are so goddamn frustrating. Because no matter what, you're going to have to deal with them eventually. Okay? They're not you say they got money, so it seems like they can hop a plane whenever they want to. So as long as your social circle is prepared to deal with it and your husband's prepared to deal with it, it's like, I'm not talking to you. You're not welcome here. There's no, and if it happens, if they show up, there's no discussion. There's no arguing anything with them. If they were to show up at your church, okay, hopefully your social circle is prepared to make them leave. If they confront you somewhere else, it's leave. You don't argue with them. You don't debate with them. And they show up at your house. That's an easy one. You just keep the doors locked. You call the police. You say, there's people here from my past. I don't want them on my property. Please have them leave. And they will do that. You don't get into how or what happened. And he said that. They don't care. But that's the best advice I can offer you. Okay? Because they're not going to quit. It's been years now. Okay? And with your father's entitlement to email other people, like your preacher or whatever, I don't know what he is actually, whoever the head of your church is, that is invasive and intrusive. That is like when my father emailed my therapist and threatened if she didn't stop seeing me. That tells you the level that your father will go to. There is no boundary he won't cross. And when then you consider what your mother wrote about being able to train you and how she wants you to address her, you're nothing more than a pet to them anyway. They could show up, and I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm trying to bring you to reality and make sure you're living in reality, that eventually they will show up. And you just gotta be prepared for that. You have to live with the assumption eventually they're going to be in front of me. I'm going to look up and they will be in front of me. That's how you need to live. Okay, with that reality. What is your plan if the narcissist appears after no contact? What is your plan? You need to have one. So, thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you so much for your story. It was a really good one. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype chat, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video for someone who can't afford one, or just contribute to the channel in general, see it grow, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And if you're still unclear, wait for the instructional video link to pop up at the end of this video to walk you through all that. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Bye, everyone.